What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to another Resplendent review, and today I'll be taking a look at Male Morgan. So Male Morgan is a red infantry mage in the 3-star 4-star pool, and he does have a preferred weapon in Greenma's Truth. So this weapon did get a weapon refine like 2 years ago, so it has not aged the worst honestly because it is still pretty nice, but obviously it is not as good as many of the modern weapons. So it does give him +3 defense, and at start of turn he can inflict -5 attack speed and resistance debuff on the nearest foes within 4 spaces, and also gets +5 to his attack speed and resistance as a visible buff. So it is pretty much like a menace skill in a sense, and then at sort of combat with his weapon refine, he's able to get the foe penalty doubler effect, which we have seen before on many of the weapons. It is also known as a Pelagian effect or a Vulture weapon effect. And this is a Spectrum Pelagian effect, so it does work on all of the debuffs that he inflicts on the enemies, which is really strong for stacking up a lot of stats. So this weapon has aged decently because of that, because we always have a lot of weapons and a lot of skills and units that can do debuffs, even though his debuffing range is not the largest. So the Pelagian effect is always going to be helpful to Morgan along with the allies that he can run so that he can debuff the enemies and get a lot of stats in the combat. And we also have Panic Smoke 4, which actually gives you the foe penalty doubler status effect. So it does stack up with the Pelagian effect built in his weapon, which is also a foe penalty doubler effect. So now he can actually have access to that, which he didn't before when he got this weapon refined. And overall, I do think that this weapon is kind of decent and doesn't really need any kind of change to like Arcane Eclipse or any kind of arcane weapon, because at least he can get a lot of stats with the debuffs. Kind of wish that he got like a splash debuff on the enemies and he could debuff more enemies instead of just the nearest enemies in 4 spaces. That would have been the best thing, because many of the debuffing units that we have got have this kind of splash debuff, which Male Morgan seems to be missing out of his weapon. But the Pelagian effect is always going to be helpful. Unfortunately, nowadays we do have a lot of unity skills and a lot of grand strategy with Legendary Male Robin, so the debuffs that you do on the enemy can come to bite you back. So that is also something that you have to watch out for. And with the Resplendent stats, you can definitely function at max investment. So any kind of extra stats are going to be helping him because he's an older mage and he doesn't really have the highest bulk, and he doesn't get any kind of damage reduction from his weapon. So any kind of extra bulk is helpful, especially because he can get a lot of debuffs on the enemies going on with his weapon and with Panic Smoke 4 and get bulky indirectly, which is really good. And he can also have access to damage reduction piercing with magical null follow-up and also with special spiral 4. So all of those new tools which Male Morgan has got, which he didn't before at the time of his weapon refine, can certainly help him. Now, another thing which can really help him is running allies that can debuff the enemies and debuff like multiple enemies across all of their stats. So here are some of the useful allies that he can run with Male Morgan. Versa being a pretty big one, and she's a free-to-play unit, so you can easily use her. Duo Mark is also amazing because of the sabotage debuff that he can provide, so it allows Male Morgan to have even more out of the debuffs. And Legendary Male Robin is also pretty good, ally with any kind of unit honestly, because of the grand strategy that he can provide. And Male Morgan is the type of unit that wants to stack up a lot of stats. So if you run a unity skill, then Legendary Male Robin is going to be helpful. Uni can provide a lot of debuffs and the panic status, so she's also a pretty great ally. And Reeve is another free-to-play unit who can be helpful for spreading the debuffs. Guntra has got her skill which can do a lot of debuffs as well. And Spring Triandra can give the foe penalty doubler effect, which is really helpful to Morgan, who can stack it up with his Pelagian effect for his weapon refine. Gregor also has a lot of long range debuffs, which is helpful. And Muarim is another free-to-play unit who can have a lot of debuffs and actually debuffs all of the enemies in his range instead of only the nearest enemies like Morgan. Haether is a new unit who can provide the debuffs through her rally skill and also provide other status effects, which can definitely help strengthen Male Morgan's combat. And then Duo Shamir does provide the Discord status and the panic status, so again you can get more out of the debuffs and also by panicking the enemy. Geralt is also another pretty good free-to-play unit who can debuff the enemies based on their attack and defense. And we do have some really good allies who can be run with Male Morgan so that he can make use of his Pelagian Tome to its max potential and get a lot of stats in combat. Obviously, these are not all of the allies that you can run with Male Morgan that are good. These are just some of them which have some good debuffing skills, so you can just take it as a suggestion. And there are obviously skills like sabotage skills and snack skills that can also be pretty good with Male Morgan if you run them on any of your allies. Now moving on to the builds that he can run on Mail Morgan, if you're going to be building him up on a budget, then you can simply give him attack speed ideal 4 because he does get the visible buff from his Greenmask Truth, so it is helpful and it does activate the ideal skill and it can be easily obtained from the divine codes. And you can also run null follow-up, which is available on Lumera, and you can just run any kind of other debuffing skill like speed smoke or attack smoke on a budget, and it does work out fine. For his special, we want to run Glimmer because he does debuff the enemy's resistance, so that's why Glimmer works out a bit better than Moonbow. Bonus Doubler is also a pretty good Sacred Seal that he can run because he does buff himself up, so it does work out pretty well. And if you're going to be investing a bit more into him, then in my opinion, the best slotsy skill for him is going to be Panic Smoke, because like I mentioned before, you can stack up the plays and effects from Panic Smoke and his Greenmask Truth, which is really helpful for getting more stats. Magical Null Follow-Up in my opinion is the best slot B skill for him, and I do like it more than Special Spiral 4 because it does provide you the Null Follow-Up, which is really helpful these days, and it also provides you with the debuff on the speed of the enemy. So it does help Morgan because he's not the fastest unit by the modern standards, and getting the debuffs on the enemies is pretty helpful. And attack speed finish 4 is going to be the premium slot A skill that you can run that can provide you with the true damage and the healing. And Glimmer is again going to be the special of choice. Now if you don't really have these skills, then you can just run Null Follow-Up instead of Magical Null Follow-Up, and instead of attack speed finish 4, attack speed ideal can work out. But again, Panic Smoke 4 is a game changer for Mail Morgan, and if you're a big Mail Morgan fan, then I would really suggest you to give him Panic Smoke 4 because the extra stats definitely help him quite a lot with the foe penalty doubler effect. You can also give him Special Spiral 4 if you want to have like the full damage reduction piercing, and this could be run with a 2 cooldown special like Glimmer. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any kind of minus on special cooldown in his weapon, so that's why Glimmer is going to be the best special that you can run. Moonbow and Ruptured Sky are not the most optimal when you're going to be debuffing opponents' resistance or attack, so that's why I do like Glimmer. And because he does need Null Follow-Up, you could run that as a Sacred Seal because that is available now. So that is also another build that you can do for Morgan if you want to have the full damage reduction piercing. He could also be run with attack speed Unity, and with the support of Legendary Male Robin, he can stack up a lot of stats with the Unity skill, Grand Strategy, Panic Smoke 4, and his weapon. So he can be a big stat ball if you want to go that route, and attack speed Unity is always going to be an option if you do have a Legendary Male Robin available that you use a lot. And you can also use him with Close Reversal because even though it might not seem like he's the bulkiest mage, he can still get bulky because of the Panic Smoke and the Greenmask Truth debuffs. So he can function with this to take on a lot of the melee foes. Obviously, he's not going to be the best melee tank, but this is still better than a lot of the mages because he can get bulky with the attack debuffs that he can get from his Slotsy and his Weapon Refine. So that can allow him to easily run Close Reversal, and it can be helpful in many of the in-game content. I do run Close Foil Mail Morgan myself, and it has definitely helped me in many of the limited battles. So this is also a build option for Mail Morgan. And like I said before, Magical Null Follow-Up and Panic Smoke 4 are the best in slot options for his Slot B and Slot C skill. So if you're a big Mail Morgan fan, those skills should be your priority to upgrade his build. And then finally, he could also be used in Arena because R-Dual Infantry 4 can allow you to score as a 180 BST unit, and if you do run 300 SP passives, then you can score like a 185 BST unit. So that can be helpful if you do want to have a mage who can debuff the enemies, and he can certainly work better than a lot of the mages because of the bulk that he can get out of his weapon. And again, Panic Smoke 4 is going to be really helpful in a game mode where units are always going to be having some kind of rally skills or visible buffs or Oath 4 skills. So Panic Smoke can be helpful. It's just that you should not be running him in the Earth season where he can face Legendary Male Robin and his Grand Strategy. Even though Ruptured Sky is not the best special with him debuffing the opponent's attack, it's still the best option for Arena as a high scoring special and a low cooldown special, so at least it can give you some kind of damage output. So just avoid the Earth season and he can function for Arena with R-Dual Infantry 4. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're excited about the Resplendent version of Mail Morgan, and if you did enjoy this video, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as foe penalty doubler effect against debuff neutralization. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.